I've heard many different opinions about this movie. Some people say it's surprisingly good, some people say it's really boring and bad. So, what do I think of it? Well, this is another first time watch. This is a movie that I've seen things about before, and I've seen people review it. But I've never actually watched it myself. It's not because I didn't want to. I've wanted to watch this movie for a while because I always found it surprisingly fascinating. But it's all just a matter of timing, honestly. And this is one of those movies where you don't know what to expect 100% going into it because it might find a way to surprise you in either being really good or atrociously bad. So, where do I fall on this? Honestly, I kind of fall in the middle. Why? Well, let's discuss, shall we? In the final live action Superman movie review of the month. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Animation Station, Animation for anything and everything animation, including TV and movies as well. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Welcome to my review of Superman Returns. What was supposedly supposed to be the actual finale of the Christopher Reeves movies. It's a movie that's styled like it. It's a movie that's supposed to take place in the same universe and the same timeline, and it's supposed to serve as kind of like an extended future epilogue. Again, despite the random recasting, but yeah, there's a good bit to talk about with this one. So I'll do my best to be as fair as possible, but I'll tell you right now, this movie's not bad. Especially considering some of the crap I've seen lately. This movie's not bad. Here's my review. I hope you enjoy. This is one that's always fascinated me, as I've heard many different takes on it from many different people, both positive and negative. But with this being directed by the same guy who made the Fox X-Men films, Bryan Singer, for those of you who don't know, it definitely gave it some pedigree. Not to mention how it's supposedly an epilogue to the Christopher Reeves films to give it a proper ending, and try to rinse the bad taste of Quest for Peace out of everybody's mouth. So with all that said, I went into this one with as open of a mind as possible, but expecting something more around decent rather than anything close to the greatness of the first two films. And that's pretty much what I got. This is a much needed and bigger improvement over the terrible third and fourth films. But as a film, overall, it's just okay. It kind of falls dead center in all five of the movies if you rank them against each other. The pros, the acting is pretty good. Like, the guy that got to play Superman was surprisingly good. Like, he's not Christopher Reeves, but he does a good job trying to play this particular iteration of this character. So, props to the casting department. I think they did get Superman right. The references are nostalgic. There are a couple references in here for the die-hard Superman fans, including one I will spoil. When they do like his first ever appearance in a newspaper, he's doing that iconic pose from his first ever comic book appearance. You know, that iconic one when he's holding up the car. It's a really cool reference, and they work it in there in a surprisingly clever way. The music is great. I mean, some of it is reused from the other movies, but even the original stuff that's in this movie, music's still pretty good. Like, it's not bad by any means, and it does feel like it fits well into this, I'll just call it a timeline of Superman movies. So the music's still great. The scene in space is one of the best parts in any of the Superman films. The scene I'm talking about specifically is the scene where you have Superman flying up in space right above Earth, and you can hear all the different distress and people calling for help in his ears. And he has to decide which one of these is the most important to go to at that particular time and moment. Like, that is a really good scene that does hit well on one of the struggles of Superman as a character. Because he wants to save everybody, but he has to figure out which ones are the most urgent first. So, really good scene. And the ending's decent. I mean, it's a bit of a weird ending, but, I mean, considering The terrible ending from Superman 4, I'll take it. However, this movie does have some pretty big problems. The story's a bit flat. Like, it's pretty much a rehash of the first two movies with a few little minor differences. The pacing is pretty slow. This is a movie that's 2.5 hours long, but the pacing is slow even for that standard because a lot of the scenes in this movie feel like cutting room floor filler. Like, you have a scene where you have these people breaking into this building. You see them going up the stairs. You see them setting everything up. You see that they're about to shoot somebody. And that's when Superman comes in, and you get that scene where you see the bullets ricocheting off his chest and one ricocheting off his eye. Really cool effects. But here's the thing. I think they could have done that a little better if the editing was allowed to actually do more. Because I think a Nostalgia Critic actually pointed this out well in his review. You could do a great job with this particular part by having the scene in space and then immediately cut to that scene with him confronting the criminals. We don't need to see the criminals going up the building and setting everything up. It's not Dark Knight. But for some reason, there's just a bunch of scenes like that where it's just awkward dead air and it doesn't really benefit the story at all. The love story's generic. I mean, they tried to do a rekindled love story thing between Lois and Clark, and there's just no chemistry. Like, unlike with Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeves, where they had a lot of chemistry, even with that scene with that stupid poem, it still felt sincere and genuine. Whereas with these two, I just don't really feel as much chemistry off of them. Not to mention, this is Superman coming back after disappearing for a long duration of time, so Lois is now married to this other guy, played by James Marsden, by the way. And it's like a weird love triangle that doesn't really go anywhere. He Who Shall Not Be Named as Lex Luthor is miscasted. I'm not going to say who it is because it's someone that deserves no recognition, but if you've seen this movie, you know who I'm talking about. He is miscast as Lex Luthor, and in this movie, he simply doesn't work. And the rewatchability is pretty low. Not the movie's entire fault, but it's mainly because there are better Superman films that came out before this. Again, the first two Christopher Reeves films. Specifically the first one. The first one I can pop in and watch any day. The second one I have to be in a specific mood for. Returns, I have to be in a very specific mood for. Like, if I'm not even in the slightest bit in that 100% exact mood, I'm not going to want to rewatch it. Not to mention, this movie's 2.5 hours long. It's weird. Like, things about it work and things about it don't. It's weird. Overall, it is a solid film, and it is a pretty interesting first-time watch, but I don't think I'll be watching it again. Like, it's a decent Superman movie. I've seen way better Superman movies this month, and considering that Quest for Peace was supposedly the actual ending of this series, yeah, I'm glad we have a slightly better ending. But the movie itself is just okay. It's decent. It's solid. I didn't hate myself while watching it, but I didn't really feel a need to rewatch it either. So, give it a try. Maybe you'll fall on the positive side, maybe you'll fall on the negative side, or maybe you'll be like me and you'll end up flat out in the middle. So, for that, my final verdict for Superman Returns is going to be a honest, probably a little bit controversial depending on which side I'm taking off here. 5.5 out of 10. It is close to being a 6. It's close to being good, but it just doesn't quite reach it because the story is just so flat. Like, if the story was a little bit more interesting and they weren't just retreading old material from the older movies, this probably would get a 6 or even a 6.5. But I do recommend you give it a watch. I do think it's one of those movies where you do have to watch it for yourself to really make your own opinion and judgment. So, give it one watch. If you end up really enjoying it, I'm glad I was able to show you a film that you really enjoy. If you end up hating it, I apologize for pointing you in the direction of another bad movie. And if you're kind of in the middle like me, well, I'm just happy to have broadened your point of view a little bit. So, yeah, that's my review of Superman Returns. Thank you guys so much for watching. And now we gotta talk about the thing that I've been building up this entire DC lie that I have been dreading. Next time, to finish off this marathon, we gotta talk about the most recent entry into the DC animated universe and the big finale of the Tomorrowverse. And I'm just gonna say right now, it's not gonna be a very pleasant review. So I'll see you next time for the baffling failure that is Justice League Crisis on Infinite Earths.
We cannot take it anymore. The time has come to cut off. Prepare for what we're ready for.